Hi guys, it's Ty and welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to talk about the top 5 books that I read in 2020. And we all know that 2020 was a sucky year, and I for one was ready for 2021 even though this year isn't starting off any better in my opinion. But a lot of good things happened with my reading last year. I was able to read a lot more. I was able to step outside of my comfort zone and read genres that I never read before. But for the most part, it was kind of like every book that I read was probably between a 3 and a 5 stars, which doesn't happen a lot. So I was really excited about the things that I read last year. So I want to go ahead and get right into it. And I'm going to start with number 5. And number 5 is actually a series. And I wanted to include the entire series because each of those books that I read probably range between a 4 and a 5. So that would be the Legend Trilogy by Marie Lu. And it's Legend, Prodigy, and Champion. And I'm just going to hold up one of them. So the first book is Legend. And so this was a popular series a few years ago on BookTube, and I decided to pick it up recently because I saw someone talking about it on their channel, and they were saying how they wanted to reread it to see if it held up over the years, and they thought that it did. And the way that they described it was very interesting to me, so I wanted to go ahead and pick it up because I did read Marie Lu's Young Elite trilogy a few years ago, and I absolutely love that series. So I decided to pick this one up. So Legend tells the story about this world. It's dystopian, so the United States is no longer the United States. It's broken up into two halves. So the western half is called the Republic, and then the eastern half is called the colonies. So kind of like in the background of the story is that both sides of what used to be the United States, they're both trying to basically take over the other. So the Republic is trying to gain control of the colonies, and the colonies is trying to gain control of the Republic. While all this is happening, we are following our main character by the name of June, who's 15 years old, and she is currently in this elite military school where these kids have to go through these trials, and that will determine whether or not they can go to these schools. And then once you go to these schools, you can go and be into the army. And a lot of it has to do with like your class. A lot of upper class people are the ones that are able to complete their trials and then go into these elite military schools. So she's in this military school. Her parents died when she was younger. She's living with her older brother, Matthias, and he ends up getting killed. And the prime suspect is this most wanted criminal by the name of Day. And so throughout the story, we are following June as she gets to officially work with the military, and her main goal is to try to capture Day and take him down for killing her brother. We all know it's not as simple as that. So we end up finding a lot about her brother. We get a lot of background for Day and why he is this nice boy turned criminal. We learn about her past. We kind of learn about why this world is divided in between the Republic and the colonies. It's a lot going on, and I really enjoyed it. It was one of those stories where as soon as I was done with this one, I had to jump into the next one, and then when I was done with that one, I had to finish out, and it was great. I will say, this probably sounds bad, but one of the things that I liked about this story is that, we're dealing with the military, and we're dealing with like a lot of fighting and battle scenes, and, a lot of the characters in here gets killed. And I like stories where not everyone makes it, because I feel like it makes the stories more realistic and it keeps me on my toes. And it's like, oh my gosh, is this person that I really like, are they going to make it to the next book? Are they going to make it to the next chapter even? And it just really kept me on my toes. And I would recommend this. Like I said, this is an older series. This is my first time reading it, and I feel like I thoroughly enjoyed it years later. So I feel like somebody else would. So if you haven't read this, I would definitely give this a try. Before I move on to the next book, I will say that she came out with, I don't want to say it's a prequel novel, but it's kind of like a spinoff to this called Rebel, which was another reason why I picked this up, because I wanted to read that one. So I wanted to get the background first. So I plan on reading that book sometime this year. So the next book that I want to talk about, so this would be number 4 on my top 5 list. That is My Sister, the Serial Killer by Owen Braithwaite. I probably butchered that, and I'm so sorry. But this was an amazing read. This takes place in Nigeria, and this basically is what it says. This girl by the name of Corday, her younger sister is a serial killer. And it opens up with her sister just having murdered one of her boyfriends, and Corday has to come over, clean up the crime scene, and they have to get rid of the body. So that you get that within like the first 5 pages of the story. So it really opens up with a bang. So the main plot of the story is that Corday is a nurse. She works at this hospital, and she is interested in one of the doctors that works there. Well, her younger sister is also interested in the same doctor. That doctor decides that he wants to pursue the younger sister. And throughout the entire story, Corday is trying to do everything that she can to prevent her younger sister from killing this doctor. So I'm laughing because it is, parts of this is funny. Her sister is crazy. But we do get some backstory on Corday and why she feels like she has to be there for her sister, and how she's struggling with, should she continue to help her sister, or is it time for her sister to learn some consequences and it's time for her to get turned in? You know, we get some backstory between her mother and her late father, and just kind of, you know, the reason why she feels like she has to be so protective of her sister. The only thing that I will say, I believe I gave this one a 4 stars, but the only thing that I will say is that the ending wasn't my favorite. I loved everything up until that point, and I think it's just because, you know, this is a short book. You know, it's not a series or anything. It's a standalone. I feel like it could have been wrapped up a little bit better than it was. But other than that, I absolutely love the story. I want to say that I read a majority of it in like one sitting. It was great. So if you need like, I mean, I keep laughing because I don't think everything was supposed to be funny, but it cracked me up. So if you kind of need like a thriller type of book, if that's your thing, but you also like to laugh, I would definitely pick this up. So number 3 on my list is a book that I read on my Kindle, and it is called Bad Romance, and it's by Heather Demetrios, and this is my first book by her, and I thought this book was phenomenal. It is about this high school girl by the name of Grace who ends up getting into this toxic and abusive relationship with this guy named Gavin. And the story is basically us following her through this relationship, how they got together, basically all the ways that he manipulated her through in the relationship, how he slowly became abusive throughout the relationship, how she tried to get out of the relationship. So essentially, we're just following her in this relationship. We're also following her home life with her abusive and verbally abusive stepfather, her verbally abusive stepmother, and why it kind of seems like she's drawn to this guy, because it's almost like that's all she knows. She comes from an abusive past, so it's almost kind of like it's natural for her to gravitate to someone that's been abusive to her. So we're just following all of those relationships. We're following her friendships and how her friends literally was by her side from day one, even though at times it seemed like, you know, she was pushing them away and getting farther and farther away from them. They were always there no matter what. And that was one of my favorite things about this story, was even though, you know, she had these abusive parents, she had this abusive relationship, even if she didn't realize it, we knew that she had people that were on her side. I will say that after I got done with this book, I was a little upset with how it ended. I don't want to spoil how it ended, but I initially was a little upset with it because I wanted it to go one way and it went the complete other way. But then the longer the book sat with me and the longer I thought about it, I was like, you know what? That was actually the best decision for that character. And so as time went on, I was like, you know what? I wouldn't have wanted the book to end any other way. So I thought this book was amazing. I want to say I ended up giving it a 5 stars. And I even went back and reread parts of it because I was just that invested into the story. So that's another one that I would absolutely recommend to anybody. So my next book that I'm going to talk about is also another series that I got into last year. And again, this is an older series. I don't know how I just missed the bandwagon for this one, but it is The Hunger Games. So, you know, we have Hunger Games, Catching Fire, and Mockingjay. So, with The Hunger Games, I only picked this up because all of the buzz last year was going on with the prequel, A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And I haven't read that yet. I'm kind of nervous too because a lot of people did not like that book. But I decided to go ahead and read The Hunger Games, and I absolutely loved the series. I don't know where I was when this came out. I want to say I was probably in my first few years of college, which wasn't a time where I was reading a lot because I was in college and I had a lot of stuff going on at that time. But I am so happy that I picked this up. I did see the first 2 movies, so The Hunger Games and Catching Fire, but I never saw Mockingjay's part 1 and 2, so I never knew how it ended. Mockingjay wasn't my favorite out of the series. I still think I gave it like a 4 stars, but The Hunger Games and Catching Fire definitely were my favorites. I'm not going to go into what the story's about. We all know at this point. If you don't know, look it up. But I thoroughly enjoyed this, and this, just like the Legend trilogy that I talked about a little while ago, this one I felt like as soon as I got done with The Hunger Games, I had to jump right back into Catching Fire, and then I had to jump right into Mockingjay because I just needed to know what was going to happen. As far as like the ending and like who she ended up with, I was okay with it. Like I said, Mockingjay wasn't my favorite. There probably would have been a few things that I personally would have changed or I would have liked to have seen happen. But overall, I love this. This is like one of those series that I feel like I could read in like another year or two and I would feel the exact same way I did when I first read it. I do plan on reading A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes at some point this year. Whenever I get a chance to read it, I feel like I'm not in a rush anymore because I haven't heard a lot of good things about it. But this, even if you still haven't read the books and you only watch the movies, I would still highly recommend you read the books. So the last book that I wanted to talk about and my number 1 read of 2020 is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. And this is a debut novel from this author. And if you didn't tell me that it was a debut novel, I would have never even realized that. This book was phenomenal. This is one of those reads where after I read it, I didn't even read anything for maybe like a week or two because this story was still in my mind. So basically we're following this character, Vanessa, in a dual timeline. So we're following her back in the year 2000 when she is in high school and she goes to like this boarding school and she ends up in this toxic relationship with her English teacher by the name of Jacob. And so we are shown him essentially grooming her over the course, I think it was one of the years she was in high school, and we're seeing him grooming her, we're seeing him manipulating her, the type of situations that they're in, and just the things that he says to her and the things that he does to her. And I've never hated a character as much as I hated this teacher. So we're following her in 2000, and then we're following her in the present, which is 2017, when it starts to come out to the public that he has done this to other girls while she was in high school. So essentially she's finding out that she was not the only girl that he was abusing. And I just felt so bad for her because even in the present, she still is just now coming to grips with realizing that she was a victim. She was kind of upset that and jealous that he was doing this to other girls, and she kind of felt betrayed because she wasn't the only girl. And even in the present, she still was keeping some sort of relationship with this teacher. And even then, this woman is grown. He's still trying to manipulate her and make her think that what he did to her back then while she was in high school was okay. I have never in my life hated somebody as much as I hated this man. And the thing that he did in the present, and I don't want to spoil anything, the only word that I could use to describe this man is that he was a coward. Like, period, point blank, the dude was a coward. And I just felt bad for her because while she was in high school, she had fell out with one of her friends, and she didn't have a lot of friends, and she leaned on this man, for that companionship, for that friendship, and he took advantage of her. And I man, this just me talking about it is making me upset all over again. I've just never been so angry while reading the story. But it was a good story. I would definitely recommend this to anybody and everybody. Even when I've been in Barnes and Nobles a couple of times since this story came out, and I've seen people going to it and kind of looking at it, and I'm like, you got to get that book. That is a good book. I absolutely loved this story. And it is one that I feel like I would probably reread again just to see if there were like other things that I missed while I was reading it the first time. But boy, this was a hard-hitting book. It was, like I said, it was one of those books that I thought about way after I read it, and another one that I would recommend. So this is definitely my number one book that I read in 2020. So that's all that I have for you guys. If you enjoyed, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.